go. That's 17 first, and that's 100. Yeah, that's pretty nippy, I should say. In this video, it's my first Holden experience. Oh, I think I'm gonna like this. So this is a 2002 Holden Commodore SV8. Oh yes, V8 baby. And it's quite an intriguing development history. The VY Commodore followed on from the VT, and as you get to this angle, you will note this area is very Opel Omega and Vauxhall Omega indeed, and that's because effectively that's what this is. This is a widened Holden Commodore, or a widened Omega, sorry. It's actually quite a bit wider than the UK car, possibly so they could cram enormous V8 engines in. And there we go, SV8, Holden by design, and really very much the final fling for the Holden Commodore. I think there was a generation after this that was kind of the end of the line, where they finally lost that Omega design hint. But yeah, by now it was getting very long in the tooth, and it was becoming less and less cost effective to make independent models for Australia. Very much developed with the Australian market in mind. The engine options were an ex-Buick V6, pushrod V6 I believe, which could be had in naturally aspirated or supercharged form. But obviously if you were anyone, you went for a V8. And initially, when the VT came out, it still used a Holden V8 engine, but by the time this car was built, I think it was from 99 onwards, they just thought, why we're developing separate engines? So it's the good old LS1 V8, 5.7 litres, 329 brake horsepower, I think. So enough, you know, to make a difference. The front styling is very distinctive and very different to the Omegas. It's just that rear quarter where the origins are perhaps most clear. We should probably take a look under the engine bay, in the engine bay even. I imagine you're quite keen to look at a big V8 engine. We'll come back and do the interior momentarily, but I haven't opened the bonnet myself yet, so this is going to be an interesting experience. We got gas struts. Good grief, yeah, that is a big old lump. Well, it's a big old lump of plastic. Somewhere under there is a pushrod V8 that produces phenomenal power, all aluminium. It was the first complete reworking of the V8 engine. It was goodbye to the old original small block development. Those engines developed for so long, and yeah, it was hello to a complete reworking of thumping V8 power. So yeah, I mean, it's a typical modern car engine bay really. You can't see an awful lot. Huge expansion tank over here, and it must be said, when I pulled up, the heat pouring out of this engine bay was substantial. Some big old fans going on down here. Yep, twin electric fans, and got their work cut out, I'm sure. So yeah, not a very exciting engine bay really, as it turns out. So far, so modern. Let's just do a bit of a quality check. Yeah, that's a decent noise going on. The interior fabric is surprisingly entertaining. I'm not sure I like it, but it's definitely a bit different. I quite like the way the headrests are sort of sculpted into the seat back. Some nice big bolsters going on. But just as the Fords were very, very Ford, so the Holden is very, very Vauxhall in here. The dashboard binnacle is a little lively. It appears to be red. I haven't even really noticed that. Matches the outside paint. There can't be many cars that do that. But in terms of the look and feel, it is very, very Vauxhall or Opel indeed. This switch, instantly recognisable from anything from a Mark III Cavalier upwards, or Vectra. So yeah, the overall vibe is a bit, you know, bit hard plasticky, not the most stylish. These heater controls are a little tricky to fathom out when you're driving along. They're all a bit tiny and crammed in, but the air conditioning is substantial. There is an automatic gearbox. I'm not sure how many gears, but there is a power mode, which obviously I was in, and traction control, which I probably won't be turning off. All the electric window switches are down here. Many airbags, side airbags, dual airbags, kind of what you'd expect. A pretty decent sized cubby there, CD player, kind of all as you'd expect. One thing I do not like is the column stalks. The column stalks have a quite nasty feel to them, which is often a General Motors thing. Vauxhalls aren't usually the best, but the most annoying factor is that to resume the cruise control, you've got to take your hand off the wheel and twist that. That is rubbish. The Falcons and Fairmonts have a steering wheel button, so you can just click in and click out without having to move your hand. And you know, cruise control is all about minimum effort, and that's what I want. We've got headlamp switch. It's got auto headlamps if you so wish. You can adjust the panel brightness with this little sticky out bit there that feels rather flimsy. But otherwise, yeah, I think it compares favourably with a BA Falcon, in that I don't really like the BA Falcon dashboard either. I prefer the AU myself. It's all curvy. Different eras, different eras. This is much more modern. You got buttons to play around with your display, which is a little tricky to read. It's not the clearest display. I should put the ignition on and maybe I can show you. So I mean, the gear selector thing is tiny, so when you get as close as that, it's quite easy to see what gear you're in. But otherwise it's a little tricky, and you'll notice that I do indeed have power mode engaged. So there we go, 138,000 kilometers from new for a 2002, so it's seen some use, but yeah, not too bad. Oh, here in the back, it's palatial. There's a good bit of headroom, perhaps not quite as much as I first imagined, and I'm right below the rear window, but knees alert, look at the leg room. It's vast. So yeah, very comfortable place to sit. So excuse my slightly dusty trousers. Vents as you would find in the Ford for the rear occupants, but yeah, very nice here. Very comfortable seat. Not all that impressed with this nonsense of no head restraints, so I would have expected slightly better, but at least they are kind of a head height. They're not going into the back of my neck. That would actually serve some purpose if I just, excuse me, moshing in the back of this Commodore. But yeah, not a bad place to sit, and fairly light and airy, decent amount of window glass. But here I can really feel just how much wider it is than an Omega. Yeah, it does feel huge. Now, one thing I don't like, I can't find any release for the boot at all, other than the button on this big fat chunky key. There we go, we are in. And yeah, you can fill the boot with all sorts of stuff. I mean, frankly, with that in there, I think you could sleep in there fairly comfortably. There is a partial folding rear seat for getting your longer stuff in. But yeah, I didn't ask them to clean the boot, so now I feel bad for showing off the insides of the boot. But it's a good old size. And because it's a bit higher at the back, I think that's probably a bigger boot than its Ford rivals. I could be wrong in that. I'm aware I'm in dangerous territory here comparing Fords and not Vauxhalls, Holdens, but yeah, that is the case. I quite like the rear lights. They're quite funky. We'll get some shots of those in motion, as is the norm. But yeah, I quite like the number plate as well. It's quite amusing, and the front one has added amusement. Put it on my tab. Yeah, I think the coppers would be expecting to stop you quite a lot in this car. This is an SV8. The SS was the hottest version with exactly the same tune engine, and but it cost $5,000 more, and that got you SS written on the seats, on the seat fabric, and these front spotlights which have been added afterwards to this model. So I don't think that's worth £5 myself. I bet those spotlights didn't cost that. We shall get you set up in a mount and we can go for a drive. But before we do, oh, let's just turn you off for a minute. We'll drop the windows and we'll wake the beast. I mean, that sounds mean and moody and purposeful to me. The fans have already kicked in. Suggests it's going to be quite an entertaining drive. Just before we get underway though, there is a small matter of wipers. And the news is not good. Holden seem to have managed to engineer in a minor triangle of doom up here, so they don't quite overlap, whereas on the Omega they did. There was a good crank on the passenger arm on an Omega, so we'd have none of this nonsense. So that's a minor disappointment. Here we go then, into D with this rather hard to use and clunky gear lever. And we're away. And so far, so like the Ford, to be honest, for just bimbling around, it feels, yeah, I mean, I can barely hear the engine. I can hear the tyre roar, because this is New Zealand, but otherwise it's fairly peaceful. I'm not sure why there's a shoe hanging from the mirror. Perhaps the owner likes shoes. So we'll just stop here and look out for trains, and then let's come to a complete stop and we'll do a proper 0 to 60. I've still got the traction control turned on because otherwise we'll be leaving 11s everywhere. So we're in power mode. Go! That's 17 first, and that's 100. Yeah, that's pretty nippy, I should say. Very tall gearing and quite a gap between the gears as well, so it's having to use the monumental torque of this 5.7 litre V8 engine. But yeah, it's all over rather quickly, isn't it? And we'll go that way, and I will wait because I see someone coming down in a big truck. I don't want to accelerate into them, that would be considered rude, I think, but here we go. Well, yeah, I can't even get through second gear. It's rather too much performance for Kiwi roads. And that's a little frustrating, because you just want to listen to that V8 scream. It makes a lovely noise. I think the best thing to do is probably to do that again, but with windows open, or at least my window open, because I'm aware we're not getting all that much noise. So we shall bring it down to a halt, checking all is clear behind, of course. Maybe we won't do it right in front of someone's house. We could be slightly kind. And if everyone is holding on tight, yeah, that is performance I'm not used to, and the worrying thing is I like it very much, but I must try and get over the childish performance aspect and focus on the rest of the car. And just like the Falcon, it feels like a lovely way to cover distance, apart from that stupid cruise control. I'm going to turn the cruise control on. I shall set the cruise control, and there we go, we are cruising at 100 kilometers an hour. But yeah, to operate the accelerate or decelerate, or the set or the resume, you've got to take your hand off the wheel. And it may seem a minor thing, but if you're doing that a lot, that's going to become annoying, and yeah, that's a little disappointing. So far the Falcon's winning for cruise control and wipers. And to be honest, the Barra-powered Falcons with the turbo kick out just as much power as this does. They don't chuck out the torque that this does, but in terms of raw performance terms, they're more than a match, really. Turn the cruise control off again, especially as there is someone coming the other way. But it seems pretty good in terms of handling. The steering's got a really nice weight. I'd say that's probably slightly better. I think I slightly prefer this. And with all the torque in the world, it's super refined. It's lower than 2000 revs at 60 miles an hour or 100 kilometers, which really is rather impressive. Sure, I saw the fuel gauge move that time. May have imagined it. I wonder what the fuel economy is. Is there a computer on this thing? No, it's just cruise control. Oh yeah, that might be it. Distance to empty 380 kilometers on a full tank. That's not encouraging. Average 39 kilometers an hour speed and 12.6 liters per 100 kilometers, which is only 1 or 2 liters more than my Fairmont is currently doing. So that's interesting. But again, this is a stretch away. On the Ford, it's on the center console of mine. I'm not sure where the BA is. Been a while since I drove that one. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, you can have your fights over what's better, a Holden or a Ford, but in reality, I don't think there's much in it. You could get the BA Falcon with a V8 engine, very popular in the Ute especially, but I'm not sure why you'd bother when the Barra engine is so good. Really, you'd only go V8 because V8 sound awesome, which, to be honest, is a pretty good reason to go for a V8 engine. But yeah, around town, I mean, I don't know what engine this has got. It just wafts along. You don't get much of a burble, not in here. It's so well insulated. But yeah, my first Holden experience, and it certainly hasn't left me disappointed. I'm only disappointed. I've been in New Zealand 2 months and it's taken me this long to get my hands on one, but finally I've managed it, and yeah, very much enjoying the experience. There is a Holden Commodore of the last shape, by which time they had finally got rid of the Vauxhall styling. I don't know if you're able to see that. I'm not sure how wide the angle is. I've also just had the amusing thought that I was driven to where this car lives, and I'm not entirely sure I can remember where that is. That serves me right. Oh, interesting vehicles coming the other way. Honda Crossroad, very interesting, and big old Isuzu maybe. Old coach, very popular for touring wagons around here. So there you go. That is the Holden Commodore SV8 with all of the nom nom noises I like. So that was the Holden Commodore SV8 in XY form. Yeah, fantastic, thumping great American V8 power, some slightly European styling influences. It's an interesting mix of motor car, I think, and I enjoyed that very much. So I shall say thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe before you go, and I shall see you in a future video. Farewell. Hot. Woohoo!